Right now, when you vote, you just pick one, right? With ranked choice voting, you get to choose more than one. You get a first choice, a second choice, and a third choice. And that way, if your favorite can't win the election, your vote instantly counts for your next choice. You have the power of backup choice. And so that means that your vote's never wasted. Your vote's always in play, and everybody has a voice. That's something you want as a voter. You want more power and expression.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is CaseStudyQB, and welcome to the Progressive War Room. We are here with Adam Friedman. Adam Friedman is the chair, the head of Rank the Vote, and he is also very active in Massachusetts. Our goal is to get ranked choice voting throughout the country.
Case, thanks so much for having me on. Hello, everybody.
So we're going to go right into it. Here at the Progressive War Room, we talk strategy. And first, I want to ask Adam, how did you start ranked choice voting, Rank the Vote organization? Give us the origin of ranked choice voting for you.
I went to BU for undergrad, and I got really into structural reform, nonpartisan structural reform of government. Got really into the problem of money in politics, problems around poor representation for most American voters. I landed on ranked choice voting in 2006, 2007 as a really great way to bring about better representation, and then worked on it here and there in the in the 2000s, looked at kind of how activists were doing it. And then in 2016, something amazing happened. The great state of Maine, advocates rose up and made Maine the first state in U.S. history to enact ranked choice voting statewide. And that inspired me to call one meeting at my tech office in Boston. And the turnout was so good. I thought I'd get 5 or 10, election reform, ranked choice voting nerds out, and it would be like just a little discussion, but it was a big turnout. Over 50 people came out.
Wow.
And I said, wow, there's a lot of interest for ranked choice voting here in Massachusetts. Let's talk about the strategy to make this a statewide campaign and pass it either in a major city or maybe even statewide straight away. And that was the birth of Voter Choice Massachusetts. And that we built into the largest statewide ranked choice voting movement in the country to date. Awesome. Today, that is now yes on 2, which there'll be an up or down vote on whether to switch Massachusetts elections to ranked choice voting in just 6 days from today. And so that was a huge movement. And just a couple of the factors around that, we grew our list from just a couple hundred activists that I knew in 2016 to today. It's over 50,000 supporters, 7,000 volunteer signups, over 1,000 active volunteers, and millions of dollars brought in through the grassroots and major donors and everything in between. So it's a very successful movement so far. We're hoping to win the ballot question, making Massachusetts the second state in the country to do this. And based on our success and the success of our organizing model, I started writing down all the lessons I've learned directing Voter Choice Massachusetts for 3+ years. I directed it and made a playbook. And out of that playbook, founded Rank the Vote as the vehicle to export that playbook to activists all over the country in every state of the U.S. to build parallel, powerful, compelling, viable statewide movements to advance this great reform, incorporated in January of 2020.
So is that available right now somewhere?
Yes.
That playbook on the website? Where can I get that?
So we actually, when people approach us or we find activists in the States, we have a process where we teach them the playbook. So it's kind of always in context of conversation with them.
Gotcha.
We want to make sure that they're using it properly, that they're being coached, they're doing the right stuff, because it's complex. There's a lot of details to it.
For selfish reasons, I'm getting involved with Voters Choice NJ. Do you know? Have we reached out to you yet, or?
Oh yeah, I co-founded Voter Choice New Jersey.
Oh well, excuse me. Hey, there you go.
So when sometimes people come later, to the 3rd or 4th statewide meeting.
Yeah.
They need a good process of making sure you're on board with the materials. But the playbook is linked in their Slack.
Nice. Let me ask you this question: what opposition have you seen to ranked choice voting?
So far, opposition has been some of the kind of usual. I hate to put this in partisan terms, because our movement is strictly nonpartisan. Mm-hmm. We do not, have any formal alignment with any particular ideology beyond better voting, better representation. But there are groups like the Heritage Foundation has come out against, and some of these kind of fiscal conservative think tanks purportedly or quote unquote fiscal conservative, like the Mass Fiscal Alliance. But opposition's been mostly a few voices that are saying things like it's too complicated for voters. Voters aren't smart enough to count 1, 2, 3 and rank their choices, which is a myth. Or, election administrators aren't smart enough to run
let me even
the
ask
tabulation.
Let me ask you about that guy, Gavin Newsom over there, that vetoed ranked choice in California. I mean, I was so disappointed, and he's just like, okay, he's been on my list that I don't want you to vote to run for president at all. But what you thought about what he said about his excuse? Was that what he used? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Newsom said, I'm afraid that this will further confuse voters, something like that. It's called, the term is concern trolling.
Exactly.
The term is using these arguments that are really, they're patronizing, they're condescending, and they're false. They're just false. It's an excuse for them to keep the status quo intact, for incumbents to remain comfortable and cozy in their position and not have to work to ensure that they have the biggest consensus from their jurisdiction to get reelected. They don't want challengers. They don't want competition. They just want to maintain their position. And so we're going to change that.
We're going to change that, Adam, definitely. So the next question I want to ask you, in Maine, I saw on fairvote.org, they had a very good article. It does need to be updated because they're able to now do ranked choice voting for the presidential level. So I did see that. I'll throw that out there. But it gave a very good overall history of how ranked choice voting was passed in Maine. I was very impressed. I was able to get up to speed really quickly, and I saw that they almost lost it. They passed it, and then they almost lost it. And I want to ask you what was your position in allowing them to recover ranked choice voting in Maine?
So I was watching that campaign starting in 2016. They first passed the ballot question straight away by a vote of the people. And then what happened was the legislature in Maine, by a slim majority of votes, created a veto process where they were going to sunset the law. And they went behind the people's back to do that. They did it in a special session, so there weren't a lot of eyes and scrutiny on the legislature's actions. And so the activists in Maine had to try it again and run a people's veto of the veto of the legislator's veto in the next 2 years later. And then we made a lot of calls from Massachusetts to Maine voters to help make sure that those voters supported it. We raised money, and we sent money to help their campaign be successful. And there were a lot of other people around the country that kind of came through to make sure that this historic law was maintained intact so that it could go to the 2018 primary election and actually be used by the people. And we did succeed. We beat back the legislature's intransigence. We ensured that voters voted again to restore ranked choice voting, and then they used it. And it was very successful when voters actually used it. Nearly 90% of voters in the first ever statewide ranked choice voting live election used the rankings. They ranked more than one choice on their ballot, which skewers that argument that voters find this too complicated and it's going to turn them off and they're not going to turn out. It's a complete BS argument because, as I said, nearly 90% of voters use the rankings. If that's not an indication of understanding and embrace of ranked choice voting, I don't know what is.
Totally. And I'm excited about Lisa Savage's chances over there. That's going to be the first time ranked choice voting will be used for the Senate race. I'm curious to see how much of the vote she gets. So I'm definitely looking out for that. The next question, what would you tell someone that contacted your group that's trying to start a RCV initiative, like from scratch? So I saw that Rank the Vote had 32 states, I believe, that already have initiative going that's bubbling up, including my state. But for those states that don't have any ranked choice voting, someone came to you fresh, what would you tell them?
Yes. So we're tracking all the movements around the country. We don't work with all of them because some have been building their own amazing movements on their own years prior to our even existing. Like Fair Vote Minnesota has been a really strong, one of the strongest strongholds for ranked choice voting in the country. So that's really great. And Utah as well. Utah has had a lot of political support from politicians. Both major parties love ranked choice voting in Utah and use it for their own internal elections. Okay. And there's probably going to be some bigger legislation to make it statewide in the near future in Utah. So that's exciting. We've co-founded over 10 new state organizations so far. We're going to do a lot more next year. And what we say to people when they come to us or when we approach them, they said, let's just get a few activists together and talk about the strategy for advancing ranked choice voting in your state. We go on a series of calls, small group calls with what I call the founding team or founders calls. We ask them about what they've done already on the issue, what's been done in their state, kind of brainstorm that a little bit. And then we share, the Massachusetts story. We share our organizing model. We share the playbook. We say, hey, take a look at this 20-page read, study it a little bit. Let's get together next week and answer your questions about it, kick the tires, push back if anything doesn't make sense or you think it doesn't apply to you, whatever. It's an organic living document that everybody should be shaping as they're using it because it should be based on the real world and what's going to work and what's not going to work. So we get them going on that. We help to train and tune their minds on how to do this correctly. And then we plan a launch meeting. We plan a big, high turnout statewide launch meeting. We try to get 50 people in the room. And then we rapidly build an organization. And then we assign team leadership. We assign, accountability and responsibility to people. We create tech infrastructure. We kind of do a rapid organization founding, kind of like a startup, and then we just go and we get them onto a flywheel of growing their metrics of growth. So growing their capacity.
You're basically giving them a framework, and you're also telling them lessons learned. Don't do this. You might want to do that, and that's awesome. So what do you want to? You want to get into some more details? This is the Political Strategy War Room, so let's get into some details if you want to.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I love strategy. Let's get into it. Okay, so there are two things that activists always do wrong. One is they rush into the enactment phase of a campaign without the ability to win that enactment. They pretend. What I call they run a pseudo campaign. They watch the after school special of how a bill becomes a law, and then they just file a bill, testify at a bill hearing. 5 or 10 math nerds, election nerds that think this is cool, or third-party people. And then they expect, based on the pure merits of the issue, by ranked choice so great, that the gates of heaven will open, legislators will recognize the purity and beauty and elegance of this upgrade of the vote, and they'll pass the bill. And nothing could be further from the truth. It's not how politics works. You're deluding yourself. You're going to be wasting your time, wasting your energy. You're going to be wasting other people's energy that you're leading in that losing battle. So don't do that. Don't do that. Don't go and collect signatures for a ballot question on day one. Don't go file a bill and plan to convince 3 legislators that it's great on day one. Don't do that.
Adam, I'm glad you said that, because literally when I read the fair vote history of how Maine, the first thing I saw was they've collected 70,000 signatures, and I'm like, hey, that's no break. Yo, that's no brainer. That's simple. Let's go out there, find 1,000 volunteers. They each get 10,000. I was thinking, okay, this is a no brainer. But go ahead. You're saying no, that's not as simple. Go ahead.
What wasn't said is that there was a context that existed. There was a structure that already existed to the Maine activists before they began their signature gathering.
Gotcha.
And so an activist might read that superficially and say, all right, I'm going to get 5 friends and we're going to collect 70,000 signatures. No, you're not.
Literally.
You're not going to be able to do that.
Gotcha.
So don't pretend. And so Maine had a lot of kind of backstory, and they built and prepared for that for a couple of years. So that's the first thing, is that people rush into enactment without first growing their capacity to be big.
So Adam, real quick. So I saw it started at like around 2015 was, I think it was 2015, 2016 that they said they handed it that 70,000. So you're saying about 3-4 years before that. So we going back to like 2012-ish, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Maine activists passed ranked choice voting in Portland in 2011. That was their first kind of stake in the ground. That created a little bit of early momentum. Got an example being used in the state. It was a good case to be made. It showed it could be run easily. And then people built off of that and tapped other campaigns, past campaigns, to build the initial list really quickly, et cetera. But let me get into the second mistake that activists make. So that's one is that they go for enactment. They rush into battle without assessing viability. Number 2, poor messaging. So the classic problem, I always go into a room and I say, raise your hand if you've tried to explain ranked choice voting to someone. Their eyes glaze over. They're like, yeah, it's hard to explain. It's wonky, it's mathy, it's technical. Like, yeah, it's you. Like, you're not explaining it well. You're not explaining it in a way that really puts forth. So this is the analogy I like to use. When you sell a car, do you open up the hood and show people the intricacies of the engine?
No.
To sell the car? No. You put the driver in the driver's seat. Yeah. And you have them use the interface. Yeah. And you have them experience what they're getting out of the car, feel it. Mm-hmm. And with ranked choice voting, you have all these nerds that go around and talk about the instant runoff tabulation algorithm of how you determine the winner, which is all fine and good, and it's an elegant algorithm, but it's not a good way to introduce someone to ranked choice voting.
Gotcha.
Because it's immediately, you need like a chart to show, everyone runs and you count the first choice votes, and if no candidate has a majority of first choice votes, then you drop the lowest vote getter, then you transfer those voters' votes to their next ranking on their ballot, and on until you have a majority winner. Like, I explained that kind of directly, but that's, for someone hearing it for the first time, it's too much. So good campaign messaging is super simple, accessible, clear, and understandable from the get-go. And so instead of that, you show people a ballot. I have them in my bookshelf over there.
Gotcha.
You show them the ballot and you say, right now when you vote, you just pick one, right? Yeah. With ranked choice voting, you get to choose more than one. You get a first choice, a second choice, and a third choice. And that way, if your favorite can't win the election, your vote instantly counts for your next choice. You have the power of backup choices. And so that means that your vote's never wasted. Your vote's always in play, and everybody has a voice. Is that something you want as a voter?
Gotcha.
You want more power and expression. Yeah, great.
Got you.
All right,
you just explained myself about a couple of days ago trying to explain ranked choice voting to one of my coworkers, and he said someone else explained it to him and he was against it because he thought it wasn't fair to the candidate. I mean, I couldn't even imagine someone saying something wasn't fair to the candidate. But anyway, I explained it to him. He kind of got it, but I'm going to use your analogy next time. Go ahead, Adam. Continue.
Yeah, sell the benefits, not the features. Kind of think about it from the voter's experience and the voter's perspective and talk a voter through that. That's a really good universal message that works. And you can if you show someone a sample ballot and you can ask them, was there ever a time that you felt pressured to choose between the lesser of two evils? Yeah. Or you felt like because someone seemed like they're more viable, then you felt like you had to vote for them rather than your true favorite. These kinds of dilemmas that no voter should ever be forced to be put into this dilemma. It's a subtle form of oppression that voters have to be pressured to vote for, a party darling or the highest fundraiser or what have you. We should have the liberty, the freedom to vote our values and have that vote still be rational and strategic, because right now it isn't. You're kind of laughed at as a dupe or a spoiler voter if you want to vote for someone who isn't designated, the most viable of the top two or whatever the case may be.
I want to get back into some nerdy stuff. We're talking about nerds. This is a political war room, so we could own that word because we want to get nerdy about passing legislation. And I'm going to go over to my screen right here. I know nobody's ever asked you this question before. We're going to dig into this budget right here. I want to show the audience this is what goes into organizing. This is something that I don't see talked about often. Money, money, money. It's important to fundraising. It's important to get these things going because this is all what helps. Adam just talked about this. It wasn't from 2015 and they just went and got 70,000 signatures. It takes a lot of grassroots galvanization and getting people together. So the first thing we have here is a statewide meeting. That funds raised at a February 27th meeting, for example, matched $500. So these are meetings to raise money. And here's a house party. These 13 parties at $750 an event. So
that was more later stage. That was in 2019 where we had already professionalized.
Okay.
For activists where they are now, the basic strategy that we teach with the playbook, and I welcome anybody to get in touch with us, and we'll have contact info after, is before you enter the enactment phase, you do a pre-campaign phase of capacity growth. So you focus only on capacity growth, only on educating the activist class and the grass tops about ranked choice voting in concept. You can form a 501c3 educational organization, but you don't get into the weeds of What's our bill going to look like? What's the language? What's the specific flavor of ranked choice voting and all the intricacies of the policy? You defer all those questions that are important, but they're not critical in the early stages. You defer them to 1 to 2 years away. Ranked choice voting is hard. Voters don't know about it in general. And I'm leading up to your question of fundraising. So you want to focus only on building your list, raising money, and gathering endorsements. Three things. Building your list, people, money, and endorsements. So lists, building a war chest, training speakers to give talks to get endorsements about ranked choice voting and concept. So let's take fundraising. When we're in the field, one of the most important teams that you can spin up in your organization is what we call the live outreach team, which is just you grab your clipboard, you get your sample ballots, you give that little pitch that I just gave on what ranked choice voting is at political events where there's tons of activists milling about, like rallies, protests, town halls, farmers markets too, like places where there's politically conscious people. They're a good audience to target for this because they're going to be thinking about voting. They're going to respond to your message. You get them on a list. You give them the pitch. Have you heard of this? Oh yeah, that's great. I love what you pitched me. Great. Give me your email, phone number, zip code, whatever. Check these boxes on the sign-up sheet. One says donate, one says volunteer. That's it. Super simple. If they check that donate box, instead of saying, thank you for saying you want to donate, have a nice day. No, they're telling you, ask me for money right then and there. So they check the box and you say, oh, I see you've checked the box to donate. I have a Square card reader on my phone right here. We can take Visa or MasterCard. So people are giving $50 today. People are giving $100 today, whatever you want to say. Aim pretty hot. And then people will say, oh, wow, okay, yeah. And then you're raising money in the field. If you have 10 or 20 activists, they're good on the pitch, which can be taught. The pitch can be trained in 1 or 2 minutes. They're good at that. They get comfortable with that. Then you train them for this next leg, which is the fundraising ask.
Okay.
And what I just did is basically all you need to do. It's super simple. And so once people get over their allergy to asking someone for money, because people get afraid of that, but that's their own internal psychological blockages, which we have to clear out. We have to work with that and show you how easy and fun. We're raising serious money from the grassroots right then and there. You have 10 or 20 activists doing this with Square card readers. Square card readers are $7. You're plugging a headphone jack on your phone. And then you're asking folks to throw down and swipe, and it takes only 10 seconds to swipe.
Wow.
So that's how you raise your early money.
Okay.
You can also raise your early money from your statewide meetings. When you have a big meeting, high energy, people are excited, you share the vision for where this could go in your state. You break up in your breakout groups. People are assigned, leadership roles. They're assigned different roles within each team. They come back into the big room. How was that, everybody? Was it a good time? Good about ranked choice voting? Are you fired up? Are you ready to win it? Okay, awesome. Part of what we need in order to do that is money. So as an organization, I want everybody in this room to contribute something. Even if you can't afford to give much, that's fine. We're going to put it all in a spreadsheet and do a sum formula. We're going to watch that number go up. We're going to set a goal. Do you think we can raise $1,000 right now? Us 40 people or 50 people in this room. That's like 20 to 30 bucks on average.
Okay.
Totally doable. So you can raise money at every meeting as well. Nice. And then eventually house parties, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, okay, so I love this. This is the type of detail strategizing, and even what you talked about raising money. This is something that can be applied to probably people who are running campaigns, because I know in the War Room we talk about candidates and running other types of campaigns. So that's very extremely interesting. Do you have any experience lobbying? I saw that somewhere that you had experience lobbying, and I'm wondering, how does that work or help you with your ranked choice voting ambitions?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert trained political operative. I'm not an expert trained lobbyist or anything like that. Lobbying is just talking to legislators about the issue. And this is part of this strategy where we actually we say no to some things. We advise to not do certain things in the beginning. Okay. And one of those things to not do in the beginning is approach legislators and elected officials.
Gotcha.
The reason is you want to be really strategic and careful about your messaging to anyone, any elected official, to make sure that it resonates.
Okay.
To make sure that you're saying the right stuff. To make sure that you're not creating opposition. You want to make sure that we have a narrative of shared values. I mean, ranked choice voting is about shared American values. Voters having more connectedness to their government, getting better representation, higher turnout, feeling like their voice is heard, and people in office feeling connected to their constituents and knowing that they have something approaching a consensus in order to have that seat and to govern. That's what ranked choice voting is all about. And so if you're going into these rooms and saying like, oh, we want to blow open the duopoly, or we're like a third party, or we're progressive this, or we're a super Tea Party that. That's not going to play well. It's not strategic. It's not smart. And you're gonna generate opposition from people who weren't even opposed to you before. But you're branding your campaign as too fringy and divisive. Ranked choice voting is about unity and bringing all sides of the aisle together. And that's where you want to train and discipline yourself to speak to that. Once you do that, and you have technical know-how of how ranked choice voting is going to be implemented in your state, which is like the legal, how it fits in legally to the existing law, and how voting machines are compatible with it. You need to study that. You need to produce some reports on that first, because those are the questions that legislators should be asking you, because it's their job to make sure that they pass a law for something that is doable on a technical and legal level. So if you don't have those answers, then you should not be lobbying anybody. You should not be talking to any elected official.
Does it also help that you're leaving contacting legislators till later because you want to galvanize to say, oh, we have 200 volunteers, we have $20,000 in the bank, and we're ready to really push this? Does that help also?
Yes, but I would up all your numbers. We have 20,000 signups and supporters. We have 1,000 volunteers.
Beautiful.
And we have 100. I mean, you don't have to talk about money you have in the bank, but talk about the popular support and traction for the idea. This needs to be a popular idea, culturally embraced and accepted. Yes, before you go and talk to elected officials, not after, before. And I repeat myself a lot because activists always do this. They get real jazzed up about the pseudo campaign of getting a few forward-thinking legislators that love the idea and co-sponsor a bill, and they go back to the meeting and they're like, we're winning. We have 3 legislators out of the 200 in our state that love ranked choice voting. Like, no, you're not winning. These are typically the legislators that say yes to a lot of new ideas. They're not. There's nothing special about you getting their support. They were already there. They barely needed to talk to you to get there. You haven't moved the ball forward. Sorry, it sounds harsh, but it's true. I don't want you to do the wrong stuff. I want you to win.
This is awesome. This is the stuff that I think people need to hear. Honestly, I know I need to hear this. I'm speaking for myself. What you said in this interview has really opened my eyes to a lot of things. I'm going to be re-listening to this interview myself personally. So I want to ask you before we run out and wrap it up shortly. So back to that chart. So those initial meetings that you raised that certain amount of money, what do you use those initial dollars for? Like, are you saving up for a certain amount? Like, are you saving up all your money at the beginning for like to get 20,000 in the bank, or are you saving up to then continue having meetings that would attract more people? Maybe you're having free pizza house parties explaining this and trying to get more volunteers. What do you do, Adam?
We use the early money to pay for tech infrastructure. So if you purchase Basecamp, the collaboration platform, we love Basecamp. It's a really fun online project management tool where all the teams can be organized in their own spaces. They can share files. They can have threaded discussions on things. I think it's like $100 a month or something. So some people are like, whoa, that's a lot of money. Got to get over this scarcity mindset. Raise money and raise a lot of it. And then you can pay for good tools that you need to grow. So just do it. And so we pay for that. Nation Builder is a fantastic online platform as well. You can send your emails from there. You spin up your whole website. You keep your whole database of supporters in there. You track everything. Really useful. Google Drive, when you're a nonprofit, incorporated 501c3, that's free, the Google Suite. So you're going to want to get that. So a lot of these tech infrastructure. There's also, you want to pay for promoting your events on Facebook. Pay $100 to boost your event, each monthly meeting, 100 or more. Spend the money because the new people that are going to come from that promotion will more than make up for it if you're asking room to keep contributing. So you're going to actually make a net revenue from that. So it's a good financial move for you to do that. And then a really great early thing to try out is a poll, some sort of public opinion poll, so you can assess where people are at with this issue. It'll give you guys rigorous intelligence about what messages work, what messages don't, pro and con messages, and then what the roadmap is to victory in terms of the public at large. It's really important. So that could run you, between $3,000 and $20,000 or $30,000, depending on the type of poll that you get. And then finally, obviously, well, I mean, notwithstanding all the obvious like field stuff like pens and clipboards and printing costs, that's obvious. But the final thing I want to say for money is that when you start really raising your first 10, 20, $30,000, you can actually start hiring some part-time staff.
Okay.
And they can do all the annoying, logistics work and scheduling and phone calling to get people to turn out, kind of stuff that is tedious to do over and over.
How helpful is that? Is that something you want to get as early as possible?
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
I think we got our first staff in year 2. We did do a poll. Our first big campaign to raise money was to do a statewide poll, which was excellent. And we shared the data with our members and learned a lot from that. We're all learning to be smart, effective political strategists. So I really try to share all those insights with everybody who comes to the meetings. And then the second big purchase or big expense was a part-time staffer to set up house parties, which we'd send our trained speakers to raise even more money from guests.
Okay. So it sounds to me like a good percent of the organizing is raising money. Am I right? Like maybe a good 80% of this?
No, I wouldn't say that actually.
Okay. Okay.
I'm kind of we're really rabbit holing into that, so it might sound like
okay, no problem. So you tell me.
It's 3 legs of the stool, and I would say the kind of 50% energy that you should be expending is growing the list, is people, money, endorsements, the people side.
And
people
okay, gotcha.
Are the heart and soul of the movement. Yeah, so that means like getting the clipboards, going to events, signing up new people.
Gotcha. As we wrap up, I really want to ask you, opposition, how does that affect? I know I remember listening to another interview you did, and you said that if opposition comes in, that can cost a ton of money to respond to that opposition. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, again, like that issue is that's later stage.
Oh,
that's when you're already
okay.
in the enacted phase.
Okay.
And this is a question that comes up, so I'm glad you raised it, because people ask this at the very first meeting, at the launch meetings, what about opposition? And I say to them, yes, that's in any campaign that can happen. We always should be on the lookout for that. But that's a question you only need to worry about in 2 years or more when you're ready. So that's one thing we can kind of liberate ourselves from worrying about, so we can focus on pure capacity growth. When you're small and just starting out, there's so many other issues flying around in politics that people aren't going to pay a lot of attention. Like there's not going to be like all sorts of media against you or anything like that. Like that's a myth. You're kind of conflating that late stage stuff with the early stage stuff. No one cares. When you're really small, no one cares.
Yeah.
So that's a liability, but it's also an asset. Because you can make mistakes. You can be in the field and, experiment with different messaging and see how people react to it, and then tweak it and course correct and get your systems, your operations going. We also emphasize that people don't be obsessed with like making the perfect database and the perfect systems of organizing your work. Yeah. Just do something that's 80% good enough and execute. Get out there and do it. Action, do the work, talk to strangers, focus on that. Your value is your hard world results that you bring in, your ability to grow those 3 metrics, the people, money, and endorsement metrics. That is your value to the movement. So everything else is a little bit fluffy and soft, but we want to really focus on measuring our results, because that's the objective, observable truth that you actually have a successful movement, that you actually have popular traction for this idea. If you can't prove it with numbers, it's as good as not even existing.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Adam. The very last question I'm going to ask you, because I'm really curious what you think. Do you think we need a constitutional amendment focused on election standards, including ranked choice voting and maybe having a universal mail-in ballots or even other things? What would you like to see? And also, as an IT, I think a technical computer science person, me personally, I'm also an IT person. I don't have a lot of faith in digital stuff. I like mail-in ballots. I like paper trail. But tell me, what do you think about that?
Constitutional amendments. I mean, I'm a pragmatist. I don't know if that's the best, the most politically viable approach, because there tends to be a lot of disagreement once you get into those details.
Gotcha.
Of like the exact mechanisms of voting.
Okay.
And so I actually do like the idea of state by state, states determining their own path. Okay. Because that allows states to be, they call them laboratories of democracy. Gotcha. So if a national law is too restrictive or regressive or not visionary enough, having a state-by-state approach allows various states to advance and then provide a shining example to their peers, to other states.
Gotcha.
So a great example is when George W. Bush was president, he wanted to restrain fuel economy standards nationwide for all automobiles. And the state of California said, that's way too low. Like he wanted something like 35 miles per gallon as the standard, something like that. California's like, no, we're going to require a lot higher because in Europe, they're pushing 50 or 60 miles per gallon. Why are we so behind? We're just going to move the ball forward. And California kind of forced the issue because their economy is massive. It's one of the largest economies in the world.
Yeah.
And so they brought pressure to bear on the federal government. They had a standoff, and I believe, if my memory serves me, California ultimately prevailed and kind of forced the hand of the federal government to raise, to allow better fuel economy.
Adam, thank you so much. We have Adam Friedman here, and we really went into some details I think that I haven't seen in any of the other interviews, and I'm hoping that we can do this again. We could get an update on Massachusetts has their ballot coming up, and we want to see what happens there, and also in other states, and also for selfish reasons, I want to ask you questions for New Jersey's voters' choice, and I hope we can do this again. Thank you so much, Adam, for coming on the Progressive War Room. And I just want to show the website Rank the Vote right here, and you can go to rankthevote.us. And here's also, I love this page, rankthevote.us/states, and you can find a state near you. Hopefully your state is on here, and if it's not on here, to reach out, and hopefully let's get this initiative started. We're going to get ranked choice voting across the nation, and it's going to save, this country is going to save the world. That's what I like to say. All right, thank you so much again, Adam, for coming on the show. You have a great one, guys. Audience, have a great one. I hope we made voters a little bit smarter.